Welcome to a quick demo on ViciECM workflow module. ViciECM workflow module is designed to let users set up multiple workflow processes for review and approval of documents or e-forms. The good thing is the application comes with a built-in process designer with which one can design multiple workflow processes, whether it is for document review or e-form review. The process designer is a graphic user interface based no code designer which can be used to create or modify multiple workflow processes in a jiffy. Uh, what you see here is a sample workflow that I've set up here where we're saying anyone can initiate this workflow process. On submission it comes to a person called Sharath who might be able to accept or reject, based on which the document gets routed to John or Alia. You can actually have a workflow process with as many stages or nodes as you require, with each stage having different actions being enabled or disabled. The workflow process setup is extremely simple. If I need to add an additional user to the workflow process, I can just click on this icon here, drag it wherever I want, and I can map it to Simon or Laila or whichever user I need to add to that particular stage. I can map it to that. Likewise, I can add a user group. I can add a supervisor role. Different kinds of workflow stages can be added to the workflow process. Once you add stages to the workflow process, you can define what's called node attributes or properties. Here is where the node gets mapped to a specific user or user group. One can define a benchmark time for each stage, which can be used for analytic reports later on. And one can also set up automatic escalations should the process remain at that particular stage beyond certain duration. These are all configurable. And you can enable disable specific actions which the user can take. Once you define the stages and enable actions and publish the workflow process is ready for usage. Just as you can design document-based workflows, this application can be used even to set up e-form workflows where one can define different e-forms for capturing relevant information that needs to be reviewed. It could be a supplier invoice form review, it could be a CapEx approval process, it could be an expense reimbursement process, irrespective of what type of process it is, as long as there is a requirement to capture some data through an e-form. You can set up the T-form in here, link the T-form to a workflow process, and let users participate in the workflow processes. Once you set up the workflow processes, the runtime usage of the workflow process is extremely user-friendly. Let me quickly walk you through a sample document-based workflow process. Here, I'm just trying to initiate a workflow process by selecting a document from the repository. So here, I'm just selecting the document that I want to review here. And once I initiate, the workflow process gets initiated where that particular document, would be displayed right here in this viewer, where one can view the document. One can also use this annotation toolbar to, highlight, or write some comments. These are called annotations. So one can add multiple annotations on top of a document, like signatures and stamps, and comments, and so on and so forth. One can give some comments. These comments are visible for every participant who's participating in the workflow process. Now, when you send a document for review during a workflow process, you can also attach some additional documents which may be related to that particular process. So here I can just come and select, certain other documents which could be of relevance for this particular process. You can add as many documents as you need as attachments. And when somebody is, looking at the workflow process, they can look at the attachments as well. So if I click on this attachment, I get to see this attachment. If I click on this link, I get to review the other document, right? So you can always toggle between the main document and attachments, as you review this particular document through the workflow process. Once you're done with that, you can come and take actions. These actions get loaded based on how the workflow was set up. Likewise, I can also show you how an e-form based workflow process works. So in the case of an e-form workflow, there is no need to select a document as such. The moment you initiate, it loads whichever was the form that has been mapped to that particular process. One can select or enter, pick a date. Depending on how you set up the e-form process, you can actually capture whatever information you need to. You can give some information. Even in the case of an e-form workflow, one can attach documents. Earlier, we have seen how you can attach documents from the central repository. You can also attach documents from the local machine. So I can quickly browse to any of the local folders. I can pick up some document which is in there, and once I do that, that document becomes available here. So if I want to look at the invoice, I can look at the invoice. If I look at the form, I get to see the form. When I'm done with that, I can just come and route this e-form through the workflow process for review and approval by the relevant people. At any point, the person who has initiated a workflow process would be able to know where the processes or the documents or e-forms that have been initiated are currently, right? So I can see quite clearly that these two sample processes that we initiated just now are currently present with a user called Sharath. Wherever Sharath is, Sharath would get an email notification automatically. And when Sharath logs into the application, Sharath would have a workflow inbox where the processes which have come for his review would be available. I can quickly process them to view the comments, annotations, and the document. So I can see the comments in here. And when I go down to the other page, I can see those annotations. I can also go look at the attachments which have been attached, right? So when I'm done with that, I can give my comments and take my action. Here, as you can see, uh, different actions got loaded depending on how the workflow process is set up. The user can select whichever action he or she wants to take and submit. The process moves to the next stage automatically. Likewise, even in the case of an e-form process, one can look at the filled form with whatever information there is. One can look at the comments and add, the reviewer can add his own comments. And as you can see, the e-form actually, these are all read-only fields here. When you set up the e-form process, you can assign permissions on different fields within the e-form to say which are read-only, which are editable, and which are hidden. And based on that, as the e-form moves through the workflow process, these fields become visible, invisible, editable, non-editable, etc. So one can look at the form, edit if required, based on permissions, of course, look at the attachments, and when these things are done, this person can take, whatever action this reviewer wants to take, and even this process disappears. At any stage, a participant will be able to look at the status of whatever process he or she participated in, and for each of these there is this process flow view which gives you an entire audit trail of what has transpired with that particular process. Here, for instance, this tells me that Shastri initiated the workflow process at 5:27, took about 2 minutes to submit that document for review. It came to Sharath, and Sharath took about 3 minutes to review the document and accept it. And it's been pending with John for about a minute, right? So the entire process, the audit trails are available for every participant at any point in time. You can also look at the document view where it displays the document with the annotations and attachments and all that. You can launch a preview mode where it nicely tabulates the details of all the participants, when the document got assigned to them, when that person has completed review and action, what action was taken, what comments were given, which attachments were reviewed. All of that is visible in a nicely tabulated format. This is something which will be available for every participant, and there are of course options to directly email the details of the workflow process from within this interface itself to whoever needs to get that information. Even in e-form workflow process, one would be able to kind of look at the process details, and when you launch a preview here, you get to see the filled e-form along with the tabulation of the participant details and the attachments which have been reviewed as part of this particular process. When a workflow process ends, these forms and comments automatically get stored as records within the DMS repository for future reference purposes. There are, of course, reports available where one can generate different kinds of workflow reports filtered by workflows, users, date ranges, status of the workflow process, etc., to generate useful information analytics about the workflow processes. You can get different kinds of reports to give you durations, process performance, etc. And all of it can help the organization make their process a lot more efficient. ViciECM workflow process can be used for managing any kind of ad hoc process that may be there in the organization, be it a document review process or e-form review process, and it gives complete visibility and transparency. And we also have access to the workflow process through the native mobile applications that are available both for Android and iOS, which can enable users to review and approve things on the go. Thank you.